what a year it was. New faces. Close races. Plenty of flame. And farewell to a legendary name. It's NHRA Championship Drag Racing 1994. In NHRA Winston Drag Racing, 1994 will always be remembered as the year of the first 6-second Pro Stock elapsed time. I'm Steve Evans. You agree, Dave McClellan?
Well, I think you're right with the 6-second Pro Stocker, but remember, 1994 also yielded an incredible string of 4-second times by a funny car, John Force.
Well, what about Scott Kalitta? 9 final rounds, 5 wins, the Winston Championship. That was special.
All right, it's kind of tough to decide, isn't it? I mean, there's lots of things that happened in 94.
I tell you what, let's let the viewer decide. How about that?
Take a look. I think you'll like it.
And let's start at the beginning. That's always a good place. The season opening Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals, Pomona Raceway, the LA County Fairplex, a magnificent facility. And Dave McClellan, it was really interesting. 5-time Top Fuel champ Joe Amato barely qualified in the number 16 spot, which meant in first round he drew the number 1 qualifier, Corey McClanathan.
And that's Jimmy Brock. He made a big move over the winter. He was the crew chief for Corey Mack. But when Corey became the pilot of the McDonald's dragster, Jimmy Brock moved over to Joe Amato's camp, and he did his job well at the Winter Nationals. That was the quickest run in history, a 4:75, a new national record for Joe Amato. Where did that come from?
Out of Jimmy Brock's brain, I guess. We figured, you know, we've been struggling all weekend, and he just went back to what he knew, and he's either going to take a good run, and it did, boy. He put it like he knew, and 4:75, we're ready.
In the semifinal round, Amato's opponent was Rance McDaniel. He had qualified number 5 with a 481 and ran 480s in the first round.
But after that 475, Amato just didn't have the steam to match Rance McDaniel's 480. We learned later Amato had damaged some fuel pumps, and the new ones just didn't cut it.
So Rance McDaniel advanced to the finals, where his opponent would be Shelly Anderson, who was having to recover from difficulties she suffered in the semifinal round, a broken A-arm on the front suspension.
Oh, no big deal. The steering just fell off.
A minor problem when you go at 295 miles an hour. So it was Shelly Anderson against Rance McDaniel.
Shelly in front of her hometown crowd, Cal State Fullerton graduate. Her father's shop just a few miles away. Rance lost traction. Shelly broke an input shaft, a piece of shrapnel punched a tire, and she had her first tricycle ride since she was a little bitty girl.
Shelly did a great job in handling this car. One, keeping it in her lane, keeping it straight down the center, and getting it stopped with no further damage to the race car, and most particularly, no damage to herself. The safety safari right on the scene to check out Shelly.
You're okay?
And I think I won.
You won.
The car's junk, but we won.
And you won where you grew up in front of all your friends in a fairly spectacular fashion.
Yeah, it was. God, the car's junk. I don't know what happened.
Well, that replay showed us two things. One, Shelly did a great job keeping the car off the guard wall, and Rance McDaniel was totally out of shape when he went up in smoke.
Everybody looking forward to John Force's first appearance of 1994, his home track, Pomona Raceway, and they weren't disappointed. And unveiling in the pits, flames. Shades of the 50s and 60s on a new Chevrolet body that looks suspiciously like last year's Oldsmobile with a new nose on it.
His opponent in round number 1 was Kenji Okazaki at the wheel of Big Jim Dunn's Dodge, the Moon Eyes car. Kenji surprised everybody with his best elapsed time ever in qualifying, a 5.02 second time.
A great side-by-side matchup. Kenji pulled ahead at three-quarter track and beat John Force, a 5:23 to a 5:26. Big Jim Dunn did in John. Kenji-san.
How you doing, Steve-san? It's about time to beat you, John.
After the U.S. Nationals, when your car broke and you couldn't race, boy, it felt good, huh?
Yeah, I get him back.
One of the real surprises at the season opening Winter Nationals was Dean Scusa at the wheel of the Pontiac Formula Firebird. He qualified number 9 at a 5:20, but in the first round, he had his fair share of problems. He was against Richard Hartman when the parachute was delayed in opening, And Pomona, being as short as it is, and when you start bouncing the tires, you don't stop very quick. He took the road through the puddle of water, and then as the car straightened out, found himself head-on into a stack of hay bales. The crew repaired the car, put a different body on it. He came back to beat Cruz Pedregon in round number 2, then faced Al Hoffman.
Al Hoffman with his new Western Auto sponsorship. He was inspired after seeing John Force go out round number 1. Hoffman had the lane choice. Scusa had to be a tired young guy after the thrash this team went through. Good lead by both drivers, but it was Al Hoffman. 5:11 at 278 miles an hour, a slow speed with a very quick elapsed time. That can spell trouble for the competition. And Hoffman's competition in the final round was Casey Spurlock out of Nashville, Tennessee, driving the same car that he won the 1990 Winter Nationals in.
Spurlock had defeated Kenji Okazaki. Well, in reality, he took a single. When Okazaki was unable to answer the call in the semis, the final round, one of the best funny car races of the year. Identical 512s, Spurlock winning the first race of the season.
You both ran 12.
Well, that means I must have done it on reaction time then, and if I did, that one's for the crew. These guys have worked so hard on this Fruit of the Loom Activewear Dodge Daytona, Steve.
Would you ever sell this car again? It's the same car you won with in 90.
I will never sell this car. This will be in the living room of my house one of these days.
The Too Much Fun Club. Now that'd be neat, going to his house with a funny car in the living room.
Lot of drama in Pro Stock, especially the return to NHRA Championship Drag Racing of this man. Daryl Alderman, after a 2-year suspension, was back for Team Mopar, the Wayne County Speed Shop, who fielded a 2-car team in 94 with Scott Jeffrey on. And of course, this is the man they had their sights set on, Warren Johnson, who was the #1 qualifier at the Pomona race. And the final, Alderman and Warren.
And Alderman had qualified in the #2 spot, only 100th of a second slower.
Maybe it just wasn't time for Daryl, as Warren Johnson eked out the win by a bumper, 709 to a 712. We would hear more from Daryl Alderman. Johnson was jubilant. Don't tell me that was just another drag race. That was a Dodge with Daryl Alderman in it.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's a battle up there. Daryl and I are probably the greatest competitors between each other ever in Pro Stock. I mean, not that we're great by Glidden standards or anything like that, but when we go there, it's the race.
The next event on the NHRA Winston Trail was the Ford Quality Care Nationals at Firebird Raceway near Phoenix, Arizona. A great facility, but one that is not particularly noted as a record-setting track. Corey McClenathan had qualified in the #1 spot at a fine 475, literally just thousandths off the national mark.
That's right, and Charlie Allen, his crew at Firebird Raceway, had laid down some new pavement, and it surprised everybody. A little bit of an altitude factor here, about 1,500 feet in the air, but it didn't bother Corey Mack. In the semifinals, he beats Connie Kalitta with a new national record, 4.74 Lee Beard points at the boards. They knew they had the backup. Another national record of 4.74.
You gotta be kidding. I don't believe it. These guys, these McDonald's, these guys are something else, man.
So are you.
What a bunch of characters. These guys make me run so good, make me look so good. I have to do my job, keep making those lights, and make them look good, too.
It's been printed here and there that that's the old Jimmy Prock combination. That's not true.
No, it's not. And anybody that thinks any different can come on down. We'll take the motor apart and show them.
That's a Lee Beard engine, bud.
I don't know that anybody took up the offer. Maybe Joe Amato might want to know, but he's got Jimmy Prock in person wrenching for him. Joe had qualified #2 at Phoenix at a 475. It was the #1 and 2 qualifiers in the finals. And Amato smoked the tires. Corey Mack off pace just a bit, 498 at 268, but he was still the winner.
Yeah! Thank you!
So as Corey McClenathan celebrated, he was the leader in the Winston Points chase after the Phoenix event, with Amato second, followed by Shelley Rance and Pat Austin rounded out the top 5.
Well, after that first round loss at Pomona, John Force came into Phoenix still struggling a little bit, qualified only 7th. And the big news, though, was Al Hoffman. Here you go, folks, on a 301.10 mile per hour qualifying run. Hoffman, the only racer to run 300 on more than one racetrack in a funny car.
That put him in the #2 qualifying position at a 509. In the semifinal round, the #1 qualifier, Chuck Etchells, who had blistered the track at a 5:05, was up against Cruz Pedregon. And as they crossed the finish line, it was Pedregon winning it with a 5:18 at 2:78. Pedregon had done well also. He had only qualified in the number 12 spot at a 5:35, but it advanced rapidly through the field.
And who would he face in the final round? None other than John Force. He may have qualified only number 7, but the car, thanks to that man Austin Coyle, was running quicker and quicker each round, and John was doing his job. Some newfound confidence after the disappointment in Pomona. This was the final in Phoenix.
The reaction time wars won by John Force. The performance wars the same. John Force wins the title 5:18 to a losing 5:19. Pedregon had some problems in the last couple of 100 feet, and that probably cost him the race. Was John happy? I'd hope so. Moved him up to number 3 in the points. Casey Spurlock continued to lead, followed by the cruiser. Al Hoffman was 4th. Kenji Okazaki, number 5.
Little did we know that the semifinals in Pro Stock at Phoenix would set the tone for the entire season. It would be Dodge versus Oldsmobile. The Oldsmobile's coming from the same family. The Dodge is coming from the same shop. Kurt Johnson versus Darrell Alderman, semifinal round.
In qualifying, it was Alderman the leader. Kurt Johnson had been in the number 4 spot. A fine 7:07 by Alderman. In qualifying, was not matched in the semifinal win. He went 7:11 at 193 to a losing 7:16. Meantime, his teammate Scott Jeffreyon was number 2 in qualifying at a 7:08.
And in the semifinals, he raced his former boss, Warren Johnson. Jeffreyon under a lot of pressure with Alderman returning to the team, two-time Winston champion. Would they look up to each other? Would they get along? Could they coexist in the same trailer? The answer would be yes before the season was over. And here the answer was, could Jeffreyon race with Warren Johnson? An affirmative. Jeffreyon wins a 7:13 to a 7:14. 2 Dodges in the final round. The boys from Wayne County, well, it was special to say the least.
And this was one of the very first times we had a chance to have dueling in-car cameras, as Scott Jeffreyon and Darrell Alderman each carrying one of our cameras. And this, in my mind, is one of the greatest shots in drag racing today. Across Darrell Alderman, looking out the window, you can see Scott Jeffreyon right alongside of him as Darrell pulled the handle. And the win went to Jeffreyon, both running 7:11 at over 194.
Well, here they are, the Dodge boys. Scott Jeffreyon on the right, congratulating his teammate, Darrell Alderman. Scott, great job. You've won it.
Thank you, Steve. Darrell, come on, get in here.
Both of you ran 7:11, we're told.
Well, we wanted to put a good show on for the Mopar fans out here. You know, there's a lot of loyal fans. They don't come any better than the fans that we have, and we wanted to put a good show on, and I think it was a tight race. I'm sure it was. I'm just surprised I left first with this guy beside me.
You both did a great job.
Thanks.
And it was the reaction time that won it for Scott Jeffreyon, who moved to 3rd in the points chase. Alderman continued to lead after 2 events, followed by WJ. KJ was 4th, and Jim Yates in the number 5 spot.
Along to the Lone Star State, the sprawling facility known as Houston Raceway Park. And that Pro Stock war carried over into this 3rd race of the 1994 season. A lot of fans were out here to see the Dodges and the Oldsmobiles and the Johnsons, and they were not disappointed. Warren Johnson couldn't be happy with Scott Jeffreyon. Scott took his speed record away with a blast of 196 miles an hour and out-qualified him. In the final round, though, Dave McClellan, the classic burned down.
This was one that was talked about all season long. They just sat there in the pre-stage beams. Finally, starter Buster Couch blew a gasket. He went out and starts motioning them back, putting them in the penalty box, if you will. Says, that's it. Get out of here.
And the crowd is going wild. NHRA Vice President of Competition, Steve Gibbs, he's down there talking to Warren Johnson. Buster
had his comments as well.
Yeah, can't repeat some of them.
Finally, they come to the starting line. They both stage. And as they headed to the finish line, it was a close race, but by about a fender length, Warren Johnson was the winner at a 7:07.
I'm sure it was not either of your intentions, but you had this crowd absolutely berserk. We could hear him clear down here.
The kid's just a jerk out there just trying to play his game. You better learn how to drive a race car before he starts playing games like that.
Well, it looked like both of you were playing the game
Anybody can stage at any time.
I don't have to stage last or first. I'll stage when I'm ready.
Warren Johnson wins it.
Those words would resound through drag racing all of the '94 season. WJ moved to the lead with Scott second, followed by Alderman Johnson and Jim Yates.
Well, after Phoenix, everybody was expecting a lot from John Force, including John and his own crew. But in round number 2, he ran into Jim Epler. Well, it wasn't so much that he ran into Epler. He ran into a problem on the starting line, maybe just overreacted. John forced a rare red light and appeared to have thrown away the Ultimate Houston title with that red light in a 5:23 elapsed time. He was dumbstruck. I do not remember the last time John Force red lighted. What happened? You didn't know?
You ain't seen the heart attack yet. I did?
You did, yeah.
I red lighted? Wow. Well, what can I say? That's part of the ball game.
Well, that surprise was definitely justified, as NHRA admitted later in the season that there were some electronic problems at Houston that gave random red lights. They apologized to John Force, but there really was nothing they could do about it, and those gremlins struck Jim Epler in the final.
That's right, Jim Epler with another red light that appeared to be a little suspicious. In fact, his car was on the starting line every time this sort of thing happened. But let's take nothing away from Al Hoffman, who won Houston at 5:17, 287 miles an hour, his first. Well, you can tell Al Hoffman is a happy man, a 5:17, a brilliant drive all day.
Yeah, we're really excited. I wanted to run it to the finish line no matter if we red light or not. The fans deserve more than 2 cars shutting off, but we're happy. We're excited. Western Auto Slick 50. Thanks an awful lot.
Needless to say, Al was very happy, pleased that he was able to win the title at the event that is sponsored by his cars and sponsors. Hoffman was the leader, followed by Spurlock, Force, Pendragon, and Etchells. 3 of 18 events completed for funny cars.
Now, in the first 2 races of '94, Scott Kalitta didn't show us a whole bunch, but let me tell you what, at Houston, he reared his blonde head. Round number 1, the first leg of a brand new national record, 4.72 seconds, quickest time in history, but he needed the 1% backup, and in the semifinal, he met up with his dad, Connie Kalitta. This, Dave McClellan, was a classic drag race for a lot of reasons.
Well, not only do you have the generation, dad versus son, but you also have the 2 team cars going at it, and it ended up the quickest side-by-side race in history. Scott won it and backed up his national mark, 474 to a losing 478.
Scott, you and your dad just ran the fastest side-by-side race in NHRA history, a 74 to a 78.
Awesome. That means we got the record. Good deal. He got me a little bit on the starting line. I could see out of the corner of my eye. They said it was about 200. So, well, you know, obviously that ain't what I wanted to see. But I beat him, so I can go home now as far as I'm concerned.
There'll be a rematch soon.
Oh, yeah.
So Scott used his round 1 time to set the national record, and Joe Amato had a spectacular moment in round 1.
You bet. This was up against rookie Bob Vandegrift Jr. in the new Fruit of the Loom car, but watch Amato, the right-hand side of your picture, nearest to our camera. You're on board. Kaboom! We've blown a tire. We're on a ride, trying to keep the car off the wall, off the center line. Amato still wins the race. Looks a lot like Shelly Anderson at Pomona, doesn't it?
I think we'll be back, yeah. We got the parts, and my boys will fix it. As long as there's no frame damage and it looks like it's good.
So there was no frame damage, and the guys were able to fix the Team Valvoline car as he came up against the Skoal Bandit, Don Prudhomme, in the semifinal round. Prudhomme was in the very beginning of his final strike tour and qualified well at a 479 and won both the first and second rounds with times in the low 480s.
Well, to say Joe Amato was pumped up for the Snake would be a gross understatement. He red lighted by 0.08 of a second, and that was no starting line glitch. He just flat left too soon. Prudhomme to the finals with a 486 at 292 miles an hour. There he would meet Scott Kalitta, and the Snake, Dave McClellan, gave young Scott a bit of a driving lesson here.
Yes, he did, as Prudhomme was to enjoy one of the greatest seasons of his career. This was really the first big moment as he took on the new national record holder, beat him off the starting line, and whipped him at the finish, 488 to a 492, as Don Prudhomme and crew celebrates. Prudhomme, into the dark of the night, stood there signing autographs for the faithful fans that stuck around through the winner's circle ceremonies. Prudhomme having the time of his life. Joe Amato was the leader in the Winston Points chase coming out of Houston, followed by Corey Mack. Scott Kalitta, the new record holder, was third. Shelly Anderson fourth. Rance McDaniel rounded out the top 5.
2 weeks later, NHRA's traveling acceleration show arrived at Gainesville Raceway for the Mac Tools Gator Nationals, and what a crowd showed up to greet him. A huge turnout, fans from all over the Northeast and the Southeast, and the temperature got turned up early on in qualifying, as a matter of fact. Up against the Smokin' Joe's car of Gordy Bonin was Del Worsham, one of the youngest drivers to ever win an NHRA title from Southern California, the family hot rod. His father Chuck, the crew chief.
Steve, I don't know whether this was a portent of things to come later in the year, but Worsham had mechanical problems. As Bonin streaked through to the finish line, the fire broke out underneath the body of the Worsham family Oldsmobile. Del was uninjured in this blazing incident.
Boy, this gets old fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, Steve. I haven't had too good of a year yet, and this isn't what I was looking for when I got here.
I know you use a little breathing apparatus for emergencies that you designed. Did you use it here?
Yeah, I got 2 big breaths of air that I wouldn't have got otherwise, and everything worked great. You know, I hate to have to use it.
But in the semifinals, Casey Spurlock up against Chuck Etchells, we were to see a fire that made Del Worsham's incident look like a bit lighter. Watch the far lane. Unlike Del's, which happened while he was coasting along, the Etchells things blew up at speed, right at the finish line. Unbelievable. Chuck got it up against the rail to scrub off some speed. The safety safari was there immediately, but this car was virtually destroyed. You can tell by the helmet there was lots of smoke and fire inside that car. And Chuck, I don't have to tell you, that was one of the worst ones anyone's had in a long time. You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, Steve, thanks.
Breathing is usually the biggest problem in those deals.
Well, it shocked me, you know, because it looked like we were starting to drive away from him, and all of a sudden, bang. Not good.
It was good for Ronnie Swearingen, the crew chief for KC Spurlock. In the first 4 races of the year, he's been in 2 final rounds, but this time his opponent was John Force, and Force beginning to show the kind of performance that he would display for the rest of the year. This race was decided on the starting line as Spurlock left 4 thousandths of a second too soon. Force won it.
Hey, I think we're in the points lead. And the nightmare continues, kiddies.
John had the points lead after Gainesville with Spurlock second, Hoffman in third, Chuck Etchells fourth, and Cruz Pedregon number 5. Those 5 guys had battled it out all year long.
Well, the fires weren't just in the funny car category. The good air at Gainesville, the excellent grip, put a strain on everybody's power plant. Watch Michael Brotherton. We have ignition. Brotherton unhurt in the incident. Now, Bobby Baldwin from California. Another bit of a flamer. Kenny Bernstein was putting in a new engine every single round. This was the 3rd engine he blew up in just qualifying. Oil all over the racetrack. Deep depression for Dale Armstrong. Even Bernstein was trying to cheer him up. Dale, get over it, son. In the semifinals, it was Scott Kalitta and Bernstein. Again, David, in eliminations. An engine used every round.
Kenny ended up qualifying in the number 9 spot with a 489. Here he was up against the national record holder. We were riding on board the Budweiser King as he flamed another one. Scott won it.
Kenny, this is really not the way you want to race, knowing you have to blow them up.
No, not really, and we're not doing it intentionally at all. I mean, Dale's trying to catch up with it. We're just off on the fuel system, like I've said since day 1 since we got here, and we're not trying to do this by any means. I want everybody to understand that. Certainly Budweiser, Quaker State, and Mac Tools by all means, and all the fans. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do every round, and that's the name of the game. We want to win a race, and that's what we're here for.
He was in a remarkable good mood considering his problems. Over in Connie Kalitta's pit area, he would race his son Scott in the finals. What would he do to win?
Connie, what are you in mischief here contemplating? You look deep in thought.
Well, we're sitting here looking at the ETs from the round before, and he's got a 10th on me. He run 10 miles an hour faster. And I'm just trying to figure out how many people over there would be mad at me if I took the car away from him before the last round.
Just like you did when he was a kid.
I know it.
One advantage when you're the wallet of the team, you can just about do anything you want. but at the starting line, father and son once again.
You betcha. Age before beauty. Connie off the mark first. Scott was never really even in it. And the old man spanks him with a 4.79. Just make the check out to the bounty hunter. Any bank in Ypsilanti, he'll cash it, right?
That's it. That'll work.
4.79. You left first. Sorry, Scott, but he did.
Oh, well. It's his turn this time, my turn next time. It was my turn last time.
Scott Kalitta held on to his points lead, followed by Amato as Dad Connie climbed up to third. Corey McLenithan fourth, and Shelley Anderson rounded out the top 5 in top fuel.
When we got into pro stock, we found us a new player in the Final Four. Jim Yates and his Pontiac from the state of Virginia had run very well in '93, never won a race, but was starting to really be a factor. And here he was in the semis up against Warren Johnson.
Yates had qualified in the number 4 spot. WJ was the leader in qualifying, and he used that power from the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile to win this semifinal round race with a 7.12 to a losing 7.15.
Well, Wayne County Speed Shop hates it when the two Dodges have to face each other, and it's not the final. This was the Final Four. They just didn't qualify correctly to make it happen. Alderman and Jeffrey on again. Remember, Jeffrey on won in Phoenix? Not this time. The near lane, Darrell Alderman at 7.09 to Jeffrey on 7.13. Alderman showing big speed at 196. Final round, Warren Johnson against another Dodge. This time, Darrell Alderman. He beat Jeffrey on the previous race in the final round. Could he handle Alderman?
He handled him easily when Alderman beat himself by leaving the starting line too soon. WJ wins at a 7.13. And he knows about pushing the lights.
You know, every so often when you're trying hard as heck out there, you're going to get one of those things. And if you don't get one once in a while, you aren't trying hard enough.
Good job. The win in Gainesville extended WJ's lead in the Winston Chase, followed by Alderman and Jeffrey on Kurt Johnson, number 4. Jim Yates remained number 5.
Well, Dave, when the racers got to Rockingham for the non-point but cash-rich Winston Select Invitational, they were greeted by a brand-new racetrack. Steve Earwood and Roy Hill, the owners of the racetrack, had spent a whole lot of money, and it paid off with some great numbers, the best this venerable old facility had ever seen. But watch this in qualifying. In the lengthening shadows of a Friday afternoon, Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile is the car to watch. After all that success in Gainesville, Warren had himself a bit of an anxious moment. Let's just watch. Oops. Doink. Pardon me. Warren saved it. He wasn't all that upset. Some good things had happened, too. This has been a rather eventful weekend. You run the fastest speed in history at 197. You hit the wall doing it. You're probably going to get 10 grand as a low qualifier, and now there's still a race tomorrow.
Yeah, it's been an enjoyable weekend so far. Of course, this wasn't very bad. It was just a little flesh wound on it.
On that run, he ran a 7.05, and as Steve said, 197 miles an hour plus, but those pesky Dodges prevailed through eliminations, and in the final round, it was Alderman and Jeffrey on. Again, our dueling onboard cameras. You're writing now with Scott Jeffrey on. There's Darrell Alderman.
Alderman just cleaned his clock on the lights and went it with a 7.16 to a quicker 7.13. Scott hates that. Every driver does. That's hard on your ego when you get beat on a hole shot.
But they still offered congratulations and condolences at the finish line.
Well, here was one qualifying run, a funny car that went a lot better than Warren Johnson's in pro stock. Al Hoffman in the far lane became $10,000 richer when he got closer to the fours than he had ever been at 5.02, number 1, and the speed that got the boys excited on the starting line, 300.80 miles per hour. Get your wits about you here, boy. 5.02, 300 miles an hour.
Well, I don't know where that all came from, but we've been working on a new combination here. I'm struggling with it. It looks like it's coming around.
It was rehabilitation time, not for John Force, but for Chuck Etchell. It was just a few weeks earlier that Etchell burnt the Kendall GT1 Dodge to the ground down in Gainesville. And here at Rockingham, he smoked the tires in a display of power. Force was forced to shut off.
Hoffman is out. Cruz is out. Force is out. Life is good, Chuck.
Well, I don't know. We obviously didn't run that good. It smoked the tires real hard upstairs.
You're still around.
Yeah, we're still here, you know, and we'll just try and be here at the end of the day. I mean, it's one round at a time, and I said up there earlier when they were introducing all the drivers, you know, we're here, we love running fourth, we're here to have some fun, and we're having some fun.
So am I.
Well, that fun continued into the final round where he faced Casey Spurlock. And Etchels may not have been on his game at the starting line, but his crew chief, John Medland, had the Dodge running very strong as he was able to prevail over Spurlock. Still smoking the tires in the middle, indicating too much power, but it was Etchels winning a 5:29 to a losing 5:39.
And the top fuel final, Don Prudhomme, Corey Mack. A little bit of a burn down, reminiscent of Houston. The crew tells Corey to stage last, but Prudhomme, he just breaks his will. Corey in, Snake in, Corey too soon, Snake win. 494 at 288 miles an hour. Put the money in Don Prudhomme's sack at the Winston Select Finals. Great win.
It may have looked confrontational, but it wasn't.
Snake, after that little staging battle, I thought we might have some words down here, all our pro stock, but no.
No, it was fine. It was fine. I was just waiting for him to go in, and I set my
You were
car.
waiting a long time,
Well,
though.
I wait a little bit, but, you know, that's the way it goes. I want to say hi to my wife, Lynn. I wish she was here. It's great.
I guarantee you the Snake's fuel tank was full in Rockingham, as it was at the Fram Southern Nationals. But in the semifinal round of Top Fuel, we saw something so unusual, we want to share it again with you. Tommy Johnson Jr. was up against Connie Kalitta. Connie, as you know, beat his son Scott in Gainesville, was on a tear. Tommy Johnson Jr. looking for a piece of him. But watch what happens, and watch quickly. Car doesn't even get to the starting line before, well, all you know what breaks loose. In this case, it was the rear end breaking loose out of Tommy Johnson's car. He probably thought he had blown both rear tires, but that was not the case. Apparently, the tubing just ripped apart, and the car wasn't really loaded as he had smoked the tires. This is the kind of an incident you never will totally explain, Dave McClellan.
Fortunately, no one was injured in this as Tommy was able to bring the car to a safe stop. He had some rather interesting observations about the incident.
Tommy, you have any idea what happened? No, it left pretty decent. Had the front end up a little bit. Smoked the tires, lifted, and yeah, next thing I know, the car was going sideways. I big kaboom, and I couldn't tell what happened.
Our partner Bob Fry was on the starting line for interviews. He didn't have to go far to catch up with Tommy Johnson Jr. Eddie Hill. Now that's a name that we've not heard much of throughout this 1994 season to this point. Hill, the defending Winston champion, fell on hard times at the start of the season and really never shook the jinx that plagued him all year long. It was the final round against Connie Kalitta that Eddie Hill had some good performances, but not good enough to win.
He even had a hole shot up the starting line, as you can clearly see, but Kalitta had the muscle thanks to crew chief Tim Richards on the other end. A 490 defeated Hill's 494. Connie only 293 miles an hour. How did that affect the Top Fuel points? Well, take a look. It moved Connie Kalitta for the first time in his life into the #1 position, followed by his son Scott McClanath in third, Amato and Prudhomme rounding out the top 5 in Top Fuel. Well, in funny car, Dean Scusa, remember him into the hay bales at Pomona? Well, he was down to the final 4 up against Al Hoffman. And on this day, it was the youngster from Ohio, the family operation, captained by his father, Don, that was indeed up to the task. Scusa, a 5:36 at 276, moved to his first ever national event final round. Who was he to race there? Well, we'll tell you in a minute. What a day to remember this already is for Dean Scusa.
Boy, you're not kidding. My first final here in Atlanta, it's incredible. I can't tell you how I feel.
Now I'll tell you, John Force was to be in the final up against Dean Scusa.
And I don't think Dean was quite as happy after this run as he was after the semifinals. Watch what happened. Up in smoke went Scusa. To the finish line went Force. And 5.22 seconds after the green light came on, John Force was the winner at Atlanta.
John, you can thank Bernie and Austin all you want, but you proved your mettle as a race car driver today. Just great.
Well, it was tough, tricky old racetrack, but you know what? I really want to scream, do the old John Force jump up and down, but it's tough, you know, when you can whip a kid like this, because you know someday he's going to replace this old man. That's the way it is.
Well, Bernie Federley and Austin Coyle, the co-crew chiefs for John Force, had him #1 after Atlanta, followed by Hoffman, Spurlock. Dean Scusa jumped all the way up to #4, and Chuck Etchels was 5th.
Well, ever since the Houston words, I think Warren Johnson saw red every time he saw the Dodge of Scott Jeffrey on. Maybe that describes why his vision was impaired on the starting line in the final run at Atlanta. We're going to ride with Scott Jeffrey on. Look to your right. And all you're going to see is an empty right-hand lane because Warren Johnson was a day and a half late. Jeffrey on just drilling train links, even 7:09 to a losing 7:16. Add in the tardiness off the starting line, and you got a huge victory for Jeffrey on. Huge.
And the two seemed amicable enough after the run. The points, Warren Johnson, the leader, Scott Jeffrey on 2nd, Alderman 3rd, Kurt Johnson 4th, Jim Yates stayed in the #5 spot.
So we left the Peachtree State, and 2 weeks later we're in the Volunteer State, Tennessee, Memphis Motorsports Park for the McGuire's Mid-South Nationals. Now, in funny car qualifying, we saw perhaps the worst accident that I think Dave McClellan and I have ever witnessed in the sport of drag racing. Maybe the fastest speed any race car has ever hit a solid wall. Watch the left side of the rear spoiler on Jerry Caminito's independent funny car. The spill plate comes off. Causes lots of aerodynamic problems. The car unloads, blows a tire. Well, you can just watch the rest. Obviously, after what we saw in Memphis, we feared for the man's life. He was medevaced to the best emergency facility in the entire state of Tennessee. And through the help of God and the good doctors there, Jerry Caminito is well on his way to recuperation. He and his wife Marion hope indeed someday to race again. And as always, the racing community was quick to respond with cash donations for Jerry to help him through the recuperation period. Jerry's a race car driver. That's what he does for a living. If he can't race, he doesn't have any income.
Well, we're trying to do all we can. We're trying to raise money for them, and you know, because they're really going to need it bad. That crash he had out there was the worst one we've ever seen.
Al Hoffman, a longtime friend of Jerry Caminito, supporting him in his racing effort throughout the early part of the season. Hoffman had qualified #1 at this event at a fine 5:17. Was up against Casey Spurlock in the semifinals, and Hoffman marched on to the win of 5:21 to a losing 5:34. In the final round, it was the Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge up against the Smokin' Joe's Ford Mustang, driven by Gordy Bonin. Bonin and the Candies and Hughes team had some problems getting everything together at the early part of the 1994 season. Here at Memphis, he qualified in the #7 spot with a 5:28, but had not been able to match the performances of Hoffman throughout the day. In the finals, it was a whole shot victory for Bonin. 5:33, the winning time. Hoffman losing at a 5:31.
Were you sure you had won? It was 0.02 of a second.
I had no clue. It was the same as the first round. I didn't know who won. I saw Scusa's car first round to the last second, and I heard Al right there, and when I shut off, his nose was right there. I thought, man, did I shut this thing off too early for the first time ever? But when luck's with you, it's with you, and today it's with you. Thank God.
John Force continued to lead, followed by Hoffman. Casey was 3rd. Chuck Etchels, #4. Dean Scusa dropped to #5 after the race at Memphis.
Let's start our top fuel recap from Memphis with Michael Brotherton for reasons that will soon become obvious. In round #1, he met up with Corey McClanathan. Michael Brotherton, the Texas driver, the secret computer entry on the entire tour, one of the best crew chiefs in the world on his team, Larry Meyer. And finally at this race, they started to show some true promise. But really in round #1, it was Corey Mack beating Corey Mack. The #1 qualifier for the 3rd time in the season. He tries to backpedal it. The blower belt comes off, and Michael Brotherton advances with a 492 at 287 miles an hour. Corey Mack was upset, furious, disgusted, and more.
And he'll hurt his hand if he keeps beating on that metal. Tommy Johnson Jr. had a brand new car at Memphis, and in the semifinals, he was up against Pat Austin. Watch DJ in the far lane. Did they rebound from that incident at Atlanta? I'd hope so. 477 at over 305 miles an hour. And the reaction of TJ, exactly the opposite of Corey Mack. Pure euphoria.
77, wow.
Whew, am I excited. That Settle said a little bit ago, he says, you know, if this thing had quit dropping cylinders, I think it'd run high 70.
Dave Settles, the crew chief, another great Texan. Former driver, wrenching for Tommy Johnson Jr. We had a great onboard camera in this race at Memphis as well.
Michael Brotherton, not good off the starting line. It may be a poor reacting car as opposed to a driver. It was Tommy Johnson Jr. 488, 296 miles an hour, wins his first national event of the year. Tommy, steer the car, Tommy. It's not over yet. You scare me when you do that, son. The points, Connie Kalitta still on top. Joe Amato now creeps into second. Scott Kalitta drops back one to third. Corey Mack into fourth. And Don Prudhomme, the final strike tour, doing just fine. Thank you. And number 5.
Pro Stock final. You want to name them? How about Alderman and Jeffrey on again? The 2 Dodge Daytonas out of Wayne County Speed Shop. This was early in the '94 season. Both racers still wheeling the short wheelbase, 100-inch long wheelbase Dodge Daytonas. A handful to drive indeed. We were on board with Scott Jeffrey on. And had the camera been looking out the other window, we'd have noticed that Darrell Alderman squeezed by for the win. His first on the Winston Trail.
The sun is glistening off of those teeth. I can't see. It's Darrell Alderman. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks a lot. You know, this is my first national event this year, and, you know, and for both the Mopars to be in the final, it's just great.
WJ continued to lead, followed by Jeffrey on. Alderman was third. Kurt Johnson fourth. Jim Yates stayed in the number 5 spot in Pro Stock.
1994 marked the second year that the Mopar Parts Nationals was held in May in Englishtown, New Jersey, rather than July it had been for a decade. And Dave McClellan, the air was rare, especially for the normally aspirated breed. Just ask Kurt Johnson, Sugar Hill, Georgia, Warren's son, because he made history on a beautiful night in north central New Jersey. What are you going to do with your $25,000?
Yeah, 6 seconds.
698.
698. Thanks for that, Warren Johnson, Horsepower, all the people from Oldsmobile, MTG, everybody.
It was under similar conditions on Saturday night that Kurt Johnson and his Oldsmobile met up against the Cutlass of Mark Osborne in the finals of the Budweiser Challenge for Pro Stock. He had already picked up the $25,000 bonus from Holly for the first 6-second run. Now another $25 grand for Kurt Johnson in winning the Budweiser Challenge. Larry Morgan knows what it's like to win the Budweiser Challenge. He has done it several times in years past, but had not had a remarkable season up to Englishtown.
In the semifinals, it was the new 6-second wonderkin, Kurt Johnson up against Larry Morgan. Morgan with the whole shot. A beautiful 4-3 light, and he executed Kurt Johnson. A 720 beat a quicker 719. But all in all, it was a fine weekend for Kurt Johnson. Larry Morgan then went on to the final round, knowing that he might need a whole shot once again to get by Darrell Alderman in the Dodge Daytona. But it was Alderman who lapped too soon. Maybe Morgan had him rattled just a little bit. So Larry Morgan wins his first race of 1994, and unfortunately his last at a 7:13, 194 miles an hour. Alderman red lights it away for the second time in the season. Warren Johnson now on top of the points, but he can hear Scott Jeffrey oncoming, not to mention Darrell Alderman. Kurt Johnson moves into number 4, and Jim Yates, that Pontiac, in the 5th spot.
If you were excited about the 6-second pass by a Pro Stocker, look what happened about 25 minutes later in Top Fuel. Michael Brotherton in the same lane blasted out the quickest ET in history, 469 at over 302.
Outstanding.
You got to do it all right here. He leans down and he goes, we turn the timers up a little bit because it looks like everybody's blowing through the clutch, and I'll be damned when it came in, away it went.
And as this tape goes to press, that is still the quickest run in drag racing history. It was Brotherton to meet up with Dom the Snake Prudhomme in the semifinals at Englishtown. The Snake had his win at Houston, a non-points win at Rockingham. Brotherton knew what he was up against.
The conditions considerably different than they were on that nighttime session, but Prudhomme was able to muster a 487 at 283. Brotherton dropping cylinders all the way, losing it at a 506. Accolades and honors coming Prudhomme's way in his last season as a driver.
It's really gratifying to me, you know, because, you know, I can remember back in 1959, believe it or not, pulling here to English Township, New Jersey with Tommy Ivel on a little match race. Now it's on my final strike, my final year, and the fans just remember they've been super in this part of the country.
And they still remember Snake as they lined up for hours just to get a glimpse of the man, to get his signature. And they weren't disappointed by his performance either, because, folks, in the final round, it was Don Prudhomme, the Skull Bandit car, up against Pat Austin, who, quite honestly, Dave McClellan had lucked out just a bit to get to this point in competition.
Pat Austin had come into this race not doing as well as he had hoped. He qualified in the number 10 spot at a fine 482 and was able to use his considerable driving skills to get to the finals. He relied on them once again as he got an advantage off the starting line, and this time the car did not let him down as Austin unceremoniously dumps the Snake in the final.
Chalk that one up to youth and exuberance and gorgeous driving off the starting line. An 88 to an 89, a classic.
Well, you know, you race the Snake, who's all we all know is a big hero of mine. And anybody who follows drag racing, we love him to death. And I want to beat as much as I can, so when he goes out, he can say, that last year was tough because of those Austins, boy.
Look what happened to the Winston Points chase as a result of Englishtown. Scott Kalitta dropped all the way to 5. Joe Amato was number 1, followed by Connie. Don Prudhomme third. Pat Austin came up to the number 4 spot.
Earlier in this video, you've seen, well, some fiery action from Joe Worsham. Believe me, those were one-alarm blazes compared to this one at Englishtown. They just don't get a lot worse than this. No idea where he is. Makes contact with the opposite wall. The safety safari, as always, on the scene, but really concerned here. The man trapped in that car. Remember, he's got that own homemade little air device in there, and it may have done a lot to save him. The car, there'll be no saving that. And Dell this time did suffer some burns. Very minor ones to his face and his hands. Some burn grafts, and about 6 weeks later, he was back in competition.
In the semifinal round of racing, the In-N-Out Penhall car, driven by Mark Oswald, was up against Al Hoffman. Hoffman, consistent throughout the entire season, had been the number 2 qualifier at a 5:06. But here it was all Mark Oswald, 5:15 at 291. Hoffman lost his chance at taking over the points lead with that semifinal round loss.
Oh, but did we love the final. The ultimate Rocky story. Gary Bolger in the Creasy family car out of Chicago, running an old combination. Don't even have a computer on board the race car. We're up against Mark Oswald. And I'll tell you what, in the early going, watch this. Gary Bolger, I thought maybe had a shot. Bolger was out even with him. Suddenly the car gave up, and Oswald was to win at Englishtown at 5:16, 286.16 miles per hour. Mark Oswald here in New Jersey. You are the funny car champion, and you did it with style and performance.
Yeah, if you have to win a race, Steve, or if you get to win a race, I should say, that's the way to do it. I mean, when you can run like we did this weekend, you can't ask for anything more.
That win in Englishtown turned out to be the only victory of the season for Mark Oswald. Force, Hoffman, Spurlock, Epler, and Pendragon. That's the top 5 after Englishtown in the Winston chase.
Well, the great traction and rare air at Englishtown didn't come to pass at Columbus, Ohio, and the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals, and crew chiefs and drivers even had to make some adjustments. The summertime heat was upon us. Alan Hoffman guided Al Hoffman into the beams in the semifinals up against Chuck Etchels. I wondered at the time if Etchels wasn't still trying to come back from that awful fire in Gainesville. Hoffman had a good chance here at Columbus to maybe take the points lead from John Forrest, who had been dropping out earlier in previous races. And here he just stomps Etchels with a 5:30 at 283.
Coming down through here, it was running a little better than it normally does, and I didn't want to go to that last turnoff down there where you guys were, because I got no brakes on this thing, so I was just lucky to stop it.
Let's fix the brakes and hope John Forrest doesn't run better than a 5:30.
I got a better idea. Why didn't they just rent it out as the newest thrill ride, driving a funny car with no brakes? John Force, the reigning Winston champ, was against the surprising Gordy Bonin in the semifinals. Force knew that both Etchels and particularly Hoffman were chomping at his heels, and he red-lit against Bonin, who absolutely blazed the tires in the middle of the racetrack, but he won it
John, there's no gentle way to say this. You gave away not only that round race, but the points lead.
Yeah, my guys, they definitely did their job this week, and I dropped the ball.
The final round was Gordy Bonin with the only Mustang-bodied funny car in competition against Al Hoffman and his Dodge.
Gordy Bonin, one of the best funny car drivers, in my opinion, the sport has ever known. Hoffman loses control, pitches it sideways. Bonin wins it at 5:23.
Wow, Columbus 2 years in a row. This is wonderful, Steve. This is great. This one's for Mr. Candies and T-Wayne. They put together this team, the Smokin' Joe's team. And you know how hard these guys have worked all year? This race was for them.
It paid off for Bonin. He's the winner. Hoffman the leader. Fourth, Spurlock, Etchels, and Pedregon. That's the top 5 in funny car.
In Top Fuel semifinals, we saw a rematch of the Houston final as Dick LaHaye checked over Scott Kalitta's car. They were to again meet Don Prudhomme. Prudhomme beat him in Houston. They wanted him here in Columbus. Snake had the better reaction time, but Kalitta had so much power, no way. 493 beat a 499. Scott Kalitta to the finals. Would he again meet his father when he got there? Tim Richards certainly hoped so. The Wrenchford, Connie Kalitta. Jimmy Prock on the Joe Amato band. He was out to stop that all-family affair.
As the 2 cars stage, Amato and Kalitta, 2 veterans of Top Fuel racing. This time, though, it was the Old Forge, Pennsylvania driver coming out on top with a subpar 503. Both had trouble getting them to fire on 8 cylinders.
But in the final round, it was go for broke here. Scott Kalitta in the far lane, Joe Amato in the near lane. Kalitta with the big power. Pulls away, and suddenly the engine blows. The tire goes. A fiery ride for Scott Kalitta. Very little in the way of motor left behind him. Greg Scott Kalitta came out of the car screaming, "Did I win? Did I win?" Talk about in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, I'm all right, Kathy and Corey. I guess we'll take it whatever we can. I think we might have passed him in the points. We can fix that car. I'm just worried about winning the race, and we did.
Well, you got to be thankful that the engines are behind the drivers in modern-day drag racing. Amato, Kalitta, Scott, Connie, Don, and Corey Mack. That's the top 5 in the Winston chase.
At Columbus, we finally saw the debut of the new Dodge Avenger. Darrell Alderman, as opposed to Scott Jeffreyon, was given the new mount. Here he met up with Jim Yates in the semifinals. They had done very little testing with this car, and Jim Yates was to test Darrell's patience. He would not stage. Forced the Dodge in first. Yates with an awesome 4-3 light. Alderman dead late. The plan worked, and Yates wins it identical 729s.
You put a hole shot on Darrell Alderman. Few have done that.
Well, you know that guy's a heck of a driver, and they got plenty of power over there. You just have to do your best every time you go up there. Our crew has just been working so hard to get us this far that when I get up the starting line right now, I got to do my best every time.
In round number 2 of Pro Stock, Bob Glidden got a giant break. His Ford Quality Care Probe was slated to run Warren Johnson in the GM Performance Parts Old. But look what happened. WJ breaks the drive shaft on the starting line, and it's Bob Glidden into the semis where he lost against Scott Jeffreyon.
But in the final round, Jeffreyon definitely on his game against Yates. He knew now that that Pontiac was dangerous and would play some games with you. Yates maybe a little bit of an edge off the starting line, but the trusty old Daytona won on this day, 722, 192.
Had a lot of fun out here today. I tell you, we battled some heat this weekend, and we made the runs when we needed to, and that's all due to the depth of the Wayne County racing team.
One interesting sidelight with Scott Jeffreyon's win. He took over the lead. That's the first time that Warren Johnson was out of the Winston lead since July of 1992.
We just thought it was hot in Columbus. When we got to the Western Auto Nationals in Topeka, we were greeted by a mercury of over 105 degrees. And before the event was even over, they announced that in 95, it would be an entire night event to try to cool things down a little bit. But I'll tell you, Dave McClellan, it was anything but dull. What the heck happened round 1 to Warren Johnson? I mean, he lost the points lead in Columbus, and here you talk about late.
It was a Rip Van Winkle act. Nearly a tenth of a second hole shot went to Mark Osborne. Now, WJ ran a whole lot quicker than Osborne did, but he could not chase him down. 7:24, the winning time. Johnson's problems with keeping the lead in the points chase continued.
Semi-final race, number 1 Pro Stock. Yates and Alderman, a repeat of Columbus. What was Yates going to do? Force Darrell to stage? Let's see. We all just kind of kicked back. Buster Couch said, I hope they run out of gas. They just sat there, and they sat there. We all just sat there. Finally, Yates moved in. Alderman wouldn't play it. And Alderman had the whole shot. We thought, well, this one's over. No way, Jose. Yates had the performance to drive around him. 7:21, 191.
I was going to make him earn it. And we went out there, we went out there to set low ET of the race and to drive as good as we could drive.
You outran him a 7:21 to his 25.
Thank God. I'm going to tell you, those guys back there and my crew have been working so hard. And this is just good to come down here and win a few rounds and make it all worthwhile. Another final, 2 in a row.
Well, if Dad was just a bit late, son Kurt got up before the roosters crowed here in Topeka as he left a big red light showing in his semifinal round race against Scott Jeffreyon. The race was over on the starting line. Jeffreyon ran a 7:18, and that gave him lane choice in the finals, where his opponent would be the nemesis of the Dodge, Jim Yates.
And don't you think Darrell Alderman had a little message from Scott when he left the trailer for the staging lanes? Punish this guy for me. Yates again was off the mark first. Would it be enough? Jeffreyon, a 7:15, put away Yates' 7:21. And the Pro Stock points looked like this. Scott from Huntington Beach, California on top. His teammate number 2, Johnson, and Yates. What about Top Fuel? How about the Snake and the Kalittas getting together one more time?
It was Scott Kalitta against Prudhomme. Prudhomme had qualified number 1 at a fine 482, and here wasted a 486. The red light showing on the starting line. Scott, with a bit of smoke out of the engine, advanced into round number 3, the semifinal.
But let's look back to round 1 for very good reason. The car in the near lane, Stevie Foster, a rookie from Texas. Look at the whole shot he strapped on Eddie Hill. And it would pay off as Foster moved through the field, 489 to a 483, embarrassing Eddie Hill. Unfortunate but true. So who did we find in the final round? How about this unheralded team, volunteer crew? Donnie Couch pitching in as a crew chief. Some of the friends of the late Jimmy Nix helping as well. But as Butch Cassidy once observed, who are those guys? Well, Stevie Foster found in the other lane Scott Kalitta. He knew who that guy was. And Scott made a further impression. He left first, he got there first at 482, almost 300 miles an hour. And that propelled Scott Kalitta into the points lead. He was second in 93 at the end of the season. Now he was on top of the heap, followed by Amato, his own father, Don Prudhomme, and Corey McClanathan hanging on to that number 5 spot.
In the semifinal round of Funny Car at Topeka 1, it was John Force coming from his number 1 qualifying position to take on the Winston Points leader, Al Hoffman. This would play a pivotal role in the Winston chase as the season wore on. Hoffman had qualified number 4, but Force had definitely been the class of the field, recording an elapsed time as quick as a 5:02 in the previous round when he beat Dean Scusa. And here Hoffman was no match as he had mechanical problems. Force running a fine 5:12.
You were taking no chances on red lighting up there.
No, I ain't taking no chances on nothing. I heard Prudhomme and Bernstein talk about these valuable points, and I used to laugh. And I'm tired of being sick over them. My buddy. Did I win? I don't even know.
You red lighted.
I did?
Just kidding, John. Well, Hoffman may have lost the points lead, but he didn't lose his sense of humor.
And we all know how much Force likes to race Cruz Pedregon in that hamburger wagon, as he calls it, the McDonald's car. Great leave by Pedregon. And then he blew the tires right off it. John Force, they stepped it up. Confidence showing there, a 5:10 at 292 miles an hour. And John, about those valuable Winston points, well, you got enough of them in Topeka to go back on top of the heap. Hoffman now second, Spurlock third, Pedregon fourth, and Chuck Etchels cruising around in 5th. At the midway point in the season, let's take just a break and bring you the highlights of the entire Pro Stock bike year. It was called Dave Schultz, dominated by the man in white, the Sunoco Suzuki. Dave was on a tear from the 1993 season, where he hadn't lost a round since, mid-season in Denver. He carried that momentum into the 94 season, chalking up the first win right here in Houston, Texas. A very game Russ Nyberg left right with Schultz. Dave fell off the bike last year here, but Schultz punched him out at the finish line, a 765 to a 769 at 174. He then talked to Alan Reinhart.
Dave, I would say this is a much better start to the season than last year.
Absolutely. I feel like I've totally redeemed myself to the Houston racetrack.
Well, the redemption may have ended a couple of weeks later at Gainesville, as David Schultz in the far lane left a big red light showing. That may also have provided some inspiration for the rest of the season for Schultz, as he went on to be an absolutely dominant figure. John Myers went on to the final round at Gainesville against Michael Phillips. And Myers was a picture of perfection at a 767, 174-mile-an-hour charge to win.
Star Racing deserves the credit for the performance this weekend. You know, you just told me we went a 67 in the final there, and we could have stepped up, but George made the decision to just keep it the same, don't get too aggressive, just win the race. Points are more important than trying to set a record right now.
As the tour got to Brainerd, the rest of the field decided to collectively up the ante to take out Schultz, who had 5 of 6 national event wins with half the season behind him. The Milk Fund, they called it, was a bounty put up by 15 other qualifiers at the race and would be given to the rider that took out Schultz. Unless he was yet undefeated in 3 races, then he'd get his own bounty. And for the milkman, the money was in milk containers. Not only did Dave Schultz come into Reading with a Brainerd and U.S. Nationals win, he set a new low elapsed time record in round number 1 over Tony Girardi. Get this, 7.53 seconds.
And that time also won him some big bonus dollars from the Slick 50 World Record Club. Dave worked his way through the second and semifinal rounds to meet John Myers for the title. And David Schultz owned the racetrack at Reading this day, 7:55 at 173 miles an hour, and a sizable chunk of change came Dave Schultz's way as a result of picking up the milk money.
But wonder of wonders, the final race of Pomona, Dave Schultz was not in the final. He had red-lighted the round before for the second time in the year. Dave won 9 of 11, but on this night, it was an all-star field. John Myers up against Jim Bernard. The 2 teammates, Myers won it at 7:62. He was the only other rider besides Dave Schultz to win a national event on 2 wheels in 1994. An amazing, and what a tribute to, the power of milk. Final points, as far as the pro stock motorcycles are concerned, what a shock. David Schultz on top, followed by Myers, Bernard, John Smith, and Michael Phillips. There's a name to watch for in 95. How about we go to Denver, Mac?
Oh, we're on Thunder Mountain at the Mopar Parts Mile High Nationals at Vandermeer Speedway. And the nighttime qualifying session definitely provided some excitement. The headlines could have read, Flamin' Frank, son fights fire. That's right, Cruz Pedregon, the son of the late Frank Pedregon, better known as Flamin' Frank, in his early racing days, suffered his first taste of a funny car fire, and it was a big one indeed. The McDonald's Oldsmobile exploding, and Pedregon fought it to a stop in the uphill shutdown area, spun it out to let the safety safari crew play catch up. He climbed from the car and was okay.
I don't think the car's damaged really bad, and our guys are back there working on it, trying to get the thing back together so we can go racing again. That's the important thing to me right now, is getting back in the race. We're okay. Just keep going.
Well, John Forrest saw that tape and called it a rookie fire. He knows a lot about such things. Well, Chuck Etchells at Denver was sporting a brand new Dodge, a Benger funny car body, the only racer to have one. He was up against Pedregon in round number 1, the rebuilt McDonald's Oldsmobile. Pedregon's car just didn't have any steam. Etchells was smoking the tires across the finish line at a 5:46 at only 248 miles an hour to move to round 2.
There he defeated Al Hoffman to move to the semis, where he matched up against Tom Hoover in the Pioneer Art of Entertainment Dodge. Hoover shocked everyone. He tied John Force for the number 1 qualifying spot as far as elapsed time goes. Force was about 10 miles an hour faster. That gave him the number 1 spot. Hoover had qualified second, but on this day, Very few people were able to challenge Chuck Etchels effectively. Hoover went up in smoke. Etchels went 5:41 at 2:65.
Well, about an hour and a half later, it was time for the finals. Rain threatening. John Force against Chuck Etchels. We thought Etchels 5:41, and the semis looked pretty good until we watched John Force. Wheels in the air. Can he keep the power to the ground? Yes, ma'am. 5:25 on Thunder Mountain at 282 miles an hour. John Force, 2 in a row.
Pop, we won it. All my sponsors, we did. We are tickled pink.
Yeah, and on top of the points, too. 1,000-point lead over Al Hoffman, Casey Spurlock, Chuck Etchels, Cruz Pedregon. The boys are starting to get worried now. It is indeed a nightmare.
Talk about a nightmare. What do you think about Top Fuel Eliminator? In qualifying, Scott Kalitta in the nighttime session laid down the first 480 run ever at the mile-high altitude. This one was a 489 at 290 miles an hour. That definitely put him at the top of the list in the qualified field of 16. In the semifinals, it was the veteran Eddie Hill not having the best of years as the reigning Winston champ came to the starting line to race against the quickest car ever at Denver, Scott Kalitta. Both of them turned in subpar performances, smoke in the tires, but Kalitta smoked his way to the finish line first. It was an unimpressive 6:12, but a victory indeed.
And in the final round, it was Scott Kalitta up against the always sharp Mike Dunn, the Darrell Gwynn car, the La Victoria Salsa machine. And Dunn came into this final as the defending champion, trying to make it 2 in a row. Great start, both on their game. But Kalitta stretches it out, melts some aluminum, but they really don't care. What a weekend. You get a boatload of points. You got to punish your old man. That's the hat trick. Wow.
Oh, I tell you, you know, beating him's fun, but he doesn't mind it, I don't think, you know. If we bring the one home at the end of the year, it'll be all right with him.
3 in a row for Scott Kalitta. Number 2 in points now is Joe Amato, followed by Connie, Don Prudhomme, and Corey Mack. Not a lot of movement at Denver there.
There was a lot of movement in the Wayne County speed shop pit area, though. Motor problems had been plaguing both of the Dodges throughout the entire weekend. That was an engine change that took place in Darrell Alderman's car. Scott Jeffreyon came to the starting line in the semi-final round of competition, and Jeffreyon has problems right in the start of the burnout. The difficulties turned out to be a broken distributor shaft. Mark Osborne went on to take a single and advance to his first final round ever in Winston Championship Drag Racing competition.
Now, Mac, you might think the guy'd be nervous. I'll tell you, this Osborne, he is so cool, so relaxed, slow-talking Southern gentleman, much like Darrell Alderman. He drives a lot like him, too.
Both drivers were very late off the starting line, but the Dodge performance prevailed for Alderman as the Wayne County team wins another one.
You had total confidence even though you made an engine change?
Oh, I'll tell you, I didn't have confidence. I had confidence in the car and all, but I didn't think I had the thing won or anything like that until the wind light come on.
Nice little move in the points on your partner who's in the booth with Mac.
Yeah, you know, every round's 200 points, and I'll take it.
Get excited, will you?
Ah, that famous smile. Scott Jeffreyon still held the lead after 10 of 18 events. Alderman was second, followed by WJ. Jim Yates moved up to 4th, and Kurt Johnson dropped to number 5.
On to the parched hills of Sonoma, California, the wine country. Just 7 days after Denver, they were at it again at this 3-race Western Swing. And who on earth would you predict to find in the Pro Stock final round? After their motor problems at Denver, the Dodge boys, Alderman and Jeffreyon. Maybe in the altitude they were trying some kind of a weird combination that didn't want to cooperate, but here everything went just fine for them as they moved into the starting line. A huge crowd here in the beautiful area of Northern California. Remember now, these guys are 1 and 2 in the points going into Sonoma. This could be absolutely critical.
And that's the way they qualified here with Alderman number 1 and Jeffreyon number 2. The advantage off the starting line significant. Scott Jeffreyon had a big hole shot, but could not make it pay off. 7:04, the winning time for Darrell Alderman.
From the pole to the podium, but you almost let that one get away, bud.
Yes, I did. You know, it looked like Scott got out on me there, and old Shamu come back on him in high gear there. You know, it was a good run. I don't know what kind of ET I run that time. It rattled just a little bit.
7:04.
7:04 is the same as we run before. Well, I better thank my sponsors, Team Mopar, and I'd like to dedicate this race to a good friend of mine that's got cancer back home, Jim Jackson. This one's for you, Jim.
Well said, Scott. That was a great shot off the starting line.
When you're racing Darrell Alderman, you got to give it your best shot, or you ain't got a chance out here, trust me.
All in all, a great day for the Dodge guys.
Yeah, the whole team won after the semifinals, and heck, we can still be friends at the end of the day.
Alderman qualified at over 197 miles an hour, and that was a new national speed record set at Sonoma. The John Force pit area, a beehive of activity and funny car competition.
First round, the hitters got the hitters. Prudhomme and Hoffman right out of the box. Hoffman hoping to regain that points lead. It was at this time in the season they had to do something about John Force, but first they had to worry about each other. Prudhomme off the mark first to the finish line first at 5:10, 291 miles an hour. Devastating to Al Hoffman's title hopes. In the semifinal, it was Force up against Prudhomme. Force, the #1 qualifier. Still an amazing race car, straight as a string, black tracking the tires. Force humbling them with a 5:17 at 289 miles an hour to Prudhomme's losing 5:21.
But that was a close race, Steve, because Prudhomme had a substantial advantage off the starting line. In reality, only 0.03 of a second separated the two at the finish. #1 and 2 qualifiers. Force #1, Etchells #2. Etchells using that Avenger body to advantage here at the sea level altitude of Sonoma and Sears Point International Raceway. But he dropped a cylinder part way down track, and Force was the winner.
I've really been off all week, and the crews almost got me with a whole shot. And then Etchells' car, we knew he could run because they've been doing their job. And Coyle said, you better help me, Force. And the car ran good. He ran a little quicker, and I was lucky on the start line.
I think he served notice, though, the rest of the season. He'll be a guy to deal with.
Yeah, Medlin that runs that car, we've been doing a lot of match racing with him. And the guy's good, but we did what Castrol and Jolly Rancher and Fram, everybody wanted us to do. And we're just tickled pink to, it ain't just a money gang. It's invaluable Winston Points. I hate to say it.
The third win in a row for John Force gives him the big lead over Hoffman, Etchells, Spurlock, and Prudhomme.
Scott Kalitta was on a bigger streak even than John Force. He came to Sonoma looking for his 4th consecutive national event victory, something no other top fuel driver had ever done. But let's pick up the action in round 1. You don't want to miss this. Connie Kalitta's in the near lane. Stevie Foster, that upstart from Texas, in the far lane. Kalitta in big trouble. Stevie Foster has to miss him, takes evasive action, drives a top fuel dragster like a Lamborghini.
Stevie Foster did a heck of a job of staying away from
I was really surprised, and I'm glad I seen him over the left-hand side when he come on around me, when we swapped over. I didn't have no control over it down there.
How bad is the damage to the car?
I don't know. Got down on the bottom of the frame. We'll see how much it does on the thing, whether we can fix it.
Well, the goal in drag racing is to go as straight as you can, but sometimes you have to make a left turn.
You look like a road racer out there.
You know what? In 1984, I ran a 5-liter Can-Am car here. I would have been proud of that move back then. Man, all I saw was him come across in front of me. I figured the only thing I'm going to do, if I went to the right, I was going to take us both out. So I just went to the left, unloaded the other parachute. Thank the good Lord. Is Connie okay?
He's fine.
That's all that counts. We can fix these two clunkers.
Well, I wouldn't really call them clunkers. Tommy Johnson Jr. provided some excitement for the fans in round #1. He was against Michael Brotherton, and he had one of those big boomers indeed. A flash of flame as the motor let go.
Well, you know, it was great to qualify #1, but I'd have took number 16 if it's what I got to get the win. And he had a problem, I think, from the moment I hit the throttle. I heard a funny noise, and it smoked the tires. I tried to pedal it and heard a big bang.
Sorry to see you out.
Yeah, me too. It was a disappointment after #1.
So Tommy Johnson Jr., who had hoped to ride that great 478 from his top spot, out in round 1, but Kenny Bernstein, resurging in the middle of the year, made his first final round appearance of the 1994 season, but he had the misfortune of racing the hottest top fuel guy in the history of the sport, Scott Kalitta.
Bernstein's car was erratic all year long. Smoking the tires one run low ET the next round. They just didn't know what to do with it. Like it had a gremlin in it. Kalitta won this one, though. 480.
80 flat. Dicko stepped her up. I knew Kenny's been pretty consistent. He's been pretty decent on the lights, and I knew I had to go for it, and Dick knew he had to go for it. And hey, we'd have come out of here either 1760 ahead or 1960 ahead. So we almost couldn't lose in a way.
And they didn't lose, and they gained those valuable Winston points as everybody headed 1 week later to the Northwest Nationals up at Seattle International Raceway. Again, good air on a great racetrack, and Dick LaHaye, the crew chief for Scott Kalitta, had him tuned up for the race with Kenny Bernstein in round number 2 of Top Fuel competition.
This is one sensational drag race. Scott Kalitta, 100th off the mark. Bernstein right there. Whoa, 485 wins to a losing 486. One of the best drag races of this year or any year, and the string goes to 18.
Boy, I tell you, I don't know what to say. Take them one round at a time. It was a tough one. You know, I knew Kenny'd be right there.
In round number 1, Del Worsham made his return to the sport at the wheel of the Roger Prim-owned Top Fuel dragster, the Prima Donna Whiskey Pete's Casino Hotel Resort entry. His opponent was Joe Amato, and watch this one. Right in front and into our onboard camera. Joe Amato grenades one. As you can see, Del Worsham taking evasive action.
The superchargers ceased to exist on that motor, and I really had my doubts whether Jimmy Prock and the crew, as good as they are, could bring that thing back, but they certainly did. And right into the final round against Scott Kalitta. An amazing comeback, maybe the comeback of the year in Top Fuel for 1994. But could he do it one more time? Could Scott Kalitta make it 5 runs? More history. 5 national event wins in a row. Something went wrong at half track. Joe Amato wins it at 4.85 seconds.
Scott's been a terror. The only bad thing is he won all them races, and it's going to be real tough to try and overtake him for the World Championship.
There's a few left.
Well, there's a few races left, and our cars are running consistent. You can come out and run 485 and 483 all day, especially after blowing the top of the blower off in the first round.
It was 19 consecutive round wins for Scott Kalitta that gave him a big lead after Seattle. Amato, Prudhomme, Kalitta, and Corey Mack rounding out the top 5.
John Force had some rare difficulties in Seattle. In round number 2, let's watch this. Dale Pulley, the late Joe Paisano's car, run by Frankie Paisano and Gary Slusher. Don't run that off of it, but when they do, they can be tough. Now, Pulley went up there and maybe brought too much power, not knowing that Force would make a mistake. He's not even sure what happened, but the car laid down horribly. 574, 180 miles an hour. They had him on the mat, and they let him up. Big mistake. Final round, John Force in Seattle versus Al Hoffman. Hoffman, by this point, well, he just hates John Force on the racetrack. Not off but on it. He just cannot get by him. And once again, Force, he makes it 4 races in a row at 5:03, 291 miles an hour.
Well, as hot as they may battle it out on the racetrack, the two can still have fun in the shutdown area. Force, Hoffman, Etchels, Pedregon, Spurlock. That's the top 5 in funny car after Seattle.
In pro stock, well, it was pretty weird. Butch Abbott from Parrish, Florida, a guy you haven't heard much about in professional drag racing, was up against Scott Jeffreyon in round number 1. And later at the end of the season, we might look back at this very round and say that's where Scott Jeffreyon lost the Winston Championship. Abbott had a 4.4 light, Jeffreyon a 5.0. Abbott had a 7.17 a lap time, Jeffreyon a 16, but he lost it. And that really hurt Scott to go out in round 1. But in round 2, here's a race they'll talk about for years. Jim Yates in the Pontiac, far lane, had no chance against Darrell Alderman. Huge performance edge. So he thought, well, I'll just sit there and I'll sit there and I'll just let Darrell cook for a while. Well, Buster Couch right now said, I'm going to red light Yates, but Yates somehow by a nanosecond snuck in. Alderman got caught with his RPMs down. Yates was gone. 7.16 beat a 7.05. You believe that? You just saw it. You could not have timed that any better and gotten away with it.
Is that what happened up there? Well, I tell you, I knew it was going to be close going in there. And, you know, Darrell's got such an advantage on us right now. And I was just trying to get ready and go in and just be really uptight and ready to go. And, boy, it was close.
This is the switch that controls the Christmas tree. This is the man that controls the switch. Tell me about the race, Alderman and Yates. You tried to red light him.
Yes, he was too late getting in. He took his time, and in my opinion, he's supposed to have red lighted. I threw the switch, and the stage light wasn't on, but some way something happened. But in my mind, I red lighted him. I was supposed to.
Yeah, I tricked you, Buster.
Oh, maybe he did, but he better be on his toes.
Timing is everything.
Well, that's cutting it just a little bit close indeed. But Jim Yates advanced to the next round. Here is Steve Schmidt, the pilot of the Dynagear Oldsmobile Cutlass. Steve Schmidt and his partner Dale Ike have developed an engine building service out of Indianapolis that leases, rents, sells anything to get those motors out. And by the end of the season, they had a lot of guys running their engines. Sometimes 9 and 10 qualified cars were with the Schmidt and Ike engine. Here's the reason why. They run good. 7:17 at 192. That win over Warren Johnson advanced Steve Schmidt, who outdrove WJ in round number 2 to the finals against Yates.
So what do you have in the finals? 2 hole shot artists. And Steve Schmidt wins his first ever national event after about 20 years of trying.
Your great driving was a big factor.
Thank you. We've worked real hard on it the last 3 weeks.
Lane choice didn't hurt either. He was fighting that other lane.
Where'd he go?
Who cares?
Good point. Thank you.
Scott Jeffrey cared about going out first round. It narrowed the gap between he and Alderman, followed by Warren Johnson, Jim Yates, and Kurt Johnson. And off we go to the wilds of Minnesota, the Champion Auto Stores Nationals, Brainerd, Minnesota. And David, this is always a kick, this race.
It is a kick indeed, the land of 10 million lakes, I think. And you think you've seen all of it. You feel that you can't watch Yates and Alderman again. Well, get a grip, because here they are once again on the starting line. A rematch of that incident that took place in Seattle, but this time it was a straight up deal. They came in pre-stage, watched Alderman stages first. Yates is close behind, as he knows Buster Couch is waiting for him, but Jim Yates puts a whole shot on Alderman like Alderman wasn't even there. And Yates wins with a 7:28.
You don't even want to know. What happened?
Beat me off starting.
Oh, man.
You did it again.
Oh, I don't think I did it again. What was it like up there? I didn't know.
17 to a 28.
How'd that happen?
You're good.
I thought it was good and fair up there. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't watching.
Nobody's
complaining. Fair last time.
So the number 2 driver in points, the Dodge driven by Alderman, is in the trailer. Also, round number 1, Larry Morgan far lane. The other Dodge, the points leader, Scott Jeffrey on near lane. Morgan last to stage. Gorgeous light by Morgan. Awful light by Jeffrey on. And Morgan upsets Jeffrey on, and let me tell you, Mike Sullivan and David Hutchins of the Wayne County Speed Shop marched both those drivers back in the woods and had a long talk. Our final round was Jim Yates and Osborne.
And what a show these two put on. With Yates noted for his starting line reaction time, Osborne responded in kind, but did it just a hair too quick. He left the red light showing that gave the win to Yates, his first ever national event title.
We've said it for over a year, Jim. You're just a win looking for a place to happen, and that place is Minnesota.
Thank God we finally got our first win. I tell you, it takes a big load off of us. You know, as hard as the crew's been working, Dick Maskin has been just working his tail off, and the whole crew down there, my wife Tony, and Dynamax has been such a good sponsor, and Pontiac is stuck behind us. It really feels good to come through at a time like this.
A beautiful 722, and Dick Maskin is this year's Craftsman crew chief of the event.
I tell you, he works hard for it. He earned that.
I know that. First time.
Thank you.
The pleasure of winning your first. Darrell Alderman and Scott Jeffrey on didn't advance in the Winston Points chase. Everybody else kind of caught up to him. Johnson, Yates, and Johnson. That's the standings after Brainerd.
Funny car, Gary Densham. The hobby racer from Bellflower, California. An industrial arts teacher, does all his own work. He can't afford to have it done. Has been racing as long as I have been around Southern California competition, and that's a long time. He was up against Richard Hartman, the Motorola car of Johnny West in the semifinal round. Densham needs the money. And Densham gets it, advances to his first ever final.
How many years to get to this point, this final round?
I got 25 years in NHRA racing, and
we'll be proud to race anybody that's up there. I guarantee you we'll give it our best shot.
You dropped a cylinder that time. Might have run pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's gonna. You know, the guys are tweaking on it. It's looking good. Richard, Ed, Army, everybody's just working their tail off.
Richard Bays, the crew chief for Gary Dencham. Had quite a challenge in the final. Austin Coyle, Bernie Federley, John Force. The nightmare was in the opposite lane. And while he may have hopped up Dencham, it didn't do much good. Force was on one of those unbeatable strings in the middle part of the season, winning yet another one. 5:13 at 2:91. John Force taking the title at Brainerd.
Round one, Connie Kalitta, near line up against Mike Dunn, the La Victoria Salsa car. But it was Kalitta who had the fire this time. Salsa out of the motor. So Connie Kalitta crispied up the headers and the tires a little bit. I don't think he was ever even aware he was on fire. Here is the other Kalitta, Scott. He knew he was on fire, especially when the tire let go up against Corey McClanathan.
We know you have engines. The biggest question is, what about the car? Can you fix that?
Oh, yeah, we can fix it. We will. We'll be back.
You've been through this once or twice before. You handle it like an expert.
I don't like to, but I guess I get in a little practice.
Got Kalitta 200-mile-an-hour artillery convention, but he didn't make it to the final round up against Don the Snake Prudhomme. Prudhomme wanting to take a win into Indianapolis. That always gives you confidence at the U.S. Nationals. Whoa, and Prudhomme was out on Kalitta. And a 4.79 won it for the Snake.
48th national event win, and I don't think you're done yet.
I don't think so, man. I tell you,
Indy's coming up.
I just want to prove to these cats that I can still drive after when I retire. I just want them to know I can still get it done. Thank you.
I don't think anybody had a doubt about Don Prudhomme. As we came to Indianapolis, it was the 40th anniversary of the granddaddy of them all, the biggest drag race of all time, the U.S. Nationals. And there were lots of activities. There was a parade of street rods representative of the years gone by. It was Art Chrisman and the fabled Hustler car that won the Bakersfield Smokers event back in 1959. I had the pleasure of interviewing the chairman of the board, Wally Parks, in the pre-race activities. But to the racing action, the Snake was there.
Oh, the Snake was there on a dreary day. The race didn't get underway till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This was round number 2. Bernstein and Prudhomme with the fans. This was a pick'em. Snake liked the stage last. He did. Together. And Prudhomme breaks an input shaft. Kenny Bernstein wins it with a huge speed, 307 miles an hour. And that sent Don the Snake Prudhomme on a farewell tow in front of the crowd at IRP. Needless to say, he got a standing ovation and maybe a tear in his eye. The U.S. Nationals marked a real valiant attempt by Eddie Hill. He made the final round, not without some cost of parts and pieces. They had to change engines, but for Hill, this could be a season saver if he could just defeat Connie Kalitta in the final. That's right, I said Connie Kalitta. Collectively, the oldest top-fuel final in drag racing history.
A total of 114 years between these two drivers. Connie, the younger, at 56. Eddie had qualified number 1 with a 4.76, but in the final round, he was just a hair late. And Connie outran him as well, winning his first national.
John Reed, is this fun or what?
Great moment down here. Eddie Hill, Connie Kalitta. Connie, you've won Indy.
Yes, it's something I've been wanting to do for many, many years. I've been here a lot. It's amazing. My mom, a couple years ago, she called me one night and she says, Connie, she says, that bottle of champagne I've had for 15 years to celebrate you winning, she says, I drank it.
Great job.
Maybe she was just a bit too early on the celebration, Connie. He had been trying to win since Detroit in 1959. Pro Stock Eliminator, round number 2. It is Steve Schmidt against Scott Jeffreyon. And as we saw a race a couple of events ago, Scott Jeffreyon's title hopes may have gone down to the loss of traction right off the line. Schmidt winning it with a 7.15.
With Jeffreyon going out first round at Seattle, first round at Brainerd, second round at Indy, his championship hopes were starting to dim. But here in the semis, Darrell Alderman met this man. They call him the Cowboy, Mark Powick, a former NHRA national record holder, national event winner. And on this night, under the portable lights at Indianapolis Raceway Park, The Dodge fans were to be disappointed. Alderman loses control, almost crosses the center line. Mark Powick goes to his first ever Indy Finals.
His elapsed time of 7:17 stood him in good stead until he had to drop the clutch against Warren Johnson and the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile. The Summit Cutlass of Powick gave Johnson a challenge, but for the third consecutive year, Warren Johnson won the U.S. Nationals, this time at a 7:13.
Let's see, that's the third U.S. Nationals for Warren Johnson?
Yeah, it is, boy. We're happy.
Quick but happy in the Big Bud Shootout final. Now, this was Sunday afternoon, the finals being on Monday. Kenji Okazaki, who had just ripped through this field, was in the far lane up against Al Hoffman in the near lane. Kenji's reaction times have been almost perfect. Big Jim Dunn making lots of power. Here it looked like Kenji had it, but no. Rocketing from behind with a sizzling 5:18 at 291 was Al Hoffman. Tommy Anderson and the crew trying to figure out how to spend that $50,000, maybe on chiropractors, the way they're throwing each other around.
Steve, it took him less than 24 hours to figure out how to spend that money as Hoffman was in the far lane against Mark Oswald in the in-and-out car. Remember, Oswald had won once on the trail this season. They both smoked the tires, got back in it, and that proved devastating to Al Hoffman. A fire exploded underneath the Dodge body, and he rode it to a stop. But the damage was severe and probably took every bit of the $50,000 to fix not only the race car but the engine. His wife Helen, crew chief Tommy Anderson, inspecting the car, seeing just how extensive the engine explosion damage was.
Al Hoffman, one of the Rule Killer cars, out in round number 1. In round number 2, we saw John Force on a tear up against KC Hollywood Spurlock, the Fruit of the Loom car that had won the Winter Nationals, the first race of the season. Force smokes the tires. Spurlock wins in round number 2 at a 5:15. Did Austin and the boys get greedy? I think so. What went through your mind when you realized Force was out of the race?
I can't even tell you. I was so excited when I never saw Force up beside me. I saw that wind light come on at the guardrail, and I was ecstatic inside the car. It's a great day.
The final round under the lights is Bob Brandt, the crew chief that came on board on the McDonald's car at this event, was against Ronnie Swearingen, the head wrench for KC Spurlock. As they staged the cars, the concentration level absolutely intense, identical reaction times, but Pendragon had the performance at a 5:13, 288.
Cruz, you've done it. You've won Indy twice.
Spectacular, Steve. I can't even believe it. I woke up this morning feeling like, hey, it's going to be one of those days, but hey, we got our confidence. We have a great team. They worked awful hard, made the right decisions, and we got a break here and there, but we put up a good number in the final.
So John Force continued to hold a big lead over Al Hoffman. The cruiser was third, Chuck Etchels and KC Spurlock, fourth and fifth, respectively.
Maple Grove Raceway, the Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals. In many ways, the track a throwback to the good old days, but lots of improvements in the beautiful hills of Pennsylvania Dutch Country. And Dave McClellan, I think you'll agree with me, there ain't a better racetrack anywhere.
Steve, I think the times, particularly in Funny Car, proved it. John Force qualified number 1 at a 5:09, went 5:01 in the first round, 5:06 in the second round. Here in the semis against Gordy Bonin, he runs yet another 5:0. This one a 5:07 to advance to the championship round.
Let's look back, though, to round number 1. Up against Whit Bazemore was Al Hoffman, the Western Auto car. Lots and lots of grip. Tommy Anderson had that clutch tight. And Houston, we have liftoff. Al Hoffman flies a Dodge Daytona. All 4 wheels off the ground, stunning this huge crowd at Maple Grove. And it came down punishingly hard. Let's watch it in replay. Not only hard on the car, but hard on the old bod, too. Al was black and blue for about a week after this landing. Right there, and the wheelie bars get the rear wheels off the ground, and it crashes back to the macadam. Awesome. Now, what did it look like from Al's point of view? Well, Al just saw a lot of Pennsylvania sky. It happened so fast, I'm not sure Al knew how spectacular he had been. Al Hoffman discussed it. It didn't help your cause. It was spectacular.
Well, it might have been spectacular, but it didn't win. But I don't know what to say. As you can see, the wheelie bar folded up, and I don't know. It just I stayed with it as long as I could, but that wasn't coming back.
Well, the wheelie bar may have folded up, but it was truly the only thing that kept him from turning turtle with the Dodge Daytona. In the final, John Force against Cruz Pedregon. What a battle this one was, but Force prevailed on this day with yet another 5:01 elapsed time.
How's it feel, Rocket Man?
Scares me to death. Coming down the alley, Coyle said, don't lift, don't let it bounce you off the throttle. And my foot was flopping on the throttle and sounded like two freight trains.
New national record for John, 302 miles an hour, but on the top fuel side of things, Scott Kalitta had the 300s covered. Round number 1, 305. Round number 2, 307. And this was round number 3 of the semis up against Kenny Bernstein, the king of speed. Bernstein was ahead until he lost traction. Kalitta thundered by at 474, 308 miles an hour, a national record for Scott Kalitta. Bernstein wasn't exactly dogging it. 3:01, the fastest side-by-side race in history.
Don Prudhomme came into this race the #1 qualifier at a great 4:73 elapsed time. But Pat Dakin from Dayton, Ohio, ended the dream that Prudhomme may have had to take home yet another title in his quest for 50 wins before he retired.
And at this point, he was by no means out of a Winston Championship, but he needed a victory at Maple Grove. He didn't get it. Pat Dakin, who ran pretty well all day, carted a 485 at 288 miles an hour. The Snake dejectingly coasting across the finish line. So the final was set up. The underdog, Pat Dakin, from years gone by, against Scott Kalitta. Tom Cattleman, Dakin's crew chief, walking away. He's a businessman from Dayton, Ohio, owns a fabrication shop, races when he can, and smokes the tires when he shouldn't. Scott Kalitta won it at 475, 304. Scott Kalitta, 475. How many is that this year?
That's 5. 9 finals. Can't believe it.
No driver's ever had a year like this in top fuel.
I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. You know, Dick's awesome. He's a magician. What can I say?
Some were saying Dick LaHaye is God. Scott Kalitta, #1 over Prudhomme, Amato, Kalitta, McClanathan, with just 3 races to go.
In the Pro Stock semifinals, again, Dodge versus Oldsmobile. Mopar against GM. Warren Johnson, the reigning Winston champ, valiantly trying to move back anywhere close to the points leaders, the Dodge boys. Jeffrey-On in the near lane had the better reaction time. Jeffrey-On now at the wheel of the Avenger felt the sting of the Cutlass.
You won't say it, I will. This team is back.
Well, it's not back 100%, but it's a lot closer than it was in the past. We got rid of one of the NHRA house cars, got one more to go.
Well, a bit of a slam on the Dodge boys there, but when you're winning, you can take those shots and kind of get away with it.
Wait a minute, Oldsmobile is the official car of NHRA. I don't know where he comes up with that, but this was the final. Warren Johnson against Darrell Alderman. Slight, tiny advantage. Alderman yanking the handles. Did he win it? He didn't even know. Yes, he did. What a beauty. 702 to a 705. Both hit 195. Woo. Warren Johnson and Darrell Alderman, a great final for both of you. 702 did it.
Yeah, you know, like I said, I was dreading him because he'd run quicker. We put new tires on just to run him, and the air was a little better and both of us run quicker. And it's always a good race when Warren and I run each other.
You saw one of the rare sights of your lifetime, Warren Johnson laughing after losing a race. Darrell Alderman had the lead. Scott Jeffrey-On was second.
All right, back to Topeka. Only this time for the Sears Craftsman Nationals. Cloudy weather, cool weather, record-setting kind of weather, Dave McClellan.
Definitely different than it was earlier in the year. There's the Dodge boys perusing a qualifying chart as we moved into the second round of competition. Scott Jeffrey-On was against one of the Johnsons, this one, Kurt Johnson. As they neared the finish line, the win going to the Dodge at a 7:19 to a losing 7:21. Jeffrey-On moved on to the finals where he would race Darrell Alderman.
He really needed Alderman to go out earlier than this even. If Jeffrey-On beat Alderman, that'd be good. He'd pick up 200 points on him. But with the races diminishing, only 2 more after Topeka, he needed Alderman out earlier. That wasn't the case. But right here, at least Jeffrey on controlled his own destiny as he beat Alderman. 7:14 to Alderman's quicker leaving, but slower 7:19.
Steve, can we race here every week? Last time I won here. And man, it's been a big dry spell, but my guys are stuck with this Dodge Avenger. We struggled with it for a little bit, as we did with Darrell's in the very beginning, but we're having a lot of fun with it now, and believe me, mentally, it feels great right now.
Well, John Force in funny car qualifying got caught up in the vagaries, if you will, of the rules. John Force had tied his national record at a 499. He needed something around a 494 to back it up within 1%. But believe it or not, he went too quick on this run. A 493 could not get the record.
The quickest elapsed time in funny car history is too quick to make you 50 grand. 493.
Something's wrong with the way it works. I don't know. It's the way they make the rules, but whatever. I sacrificed it. We all play by the same rules, but yeah, it's a pain to do it and not do it. I'm starting to get aggravated, but hey, that's drag racing. No one said it was easy. We wouldn't be here.
If it were easy, everybody would be doing it, John. In round number 1, Force put an end to all of his miseries, and the crowds and the officials and everyone else as he took on Ronnie Young. Young fell behind as Force ran a 495. That backed up the 493, the new national record, standing at that remarkable achievement.
And $50,000 from the Slick 50 Record Club. The final again, Pedregon and Force. John watched Pedregon win his U.S. Nationals. He wanted him at Topeka. John has an input shaft go, and Pedregon wins it.
What a victory over Force. That's unbelievable. That just goes to show if you hang in there, keep plugging away, we're champions.
Kids out there, you listening?
John Force clinched his 4th Winston title with his performances at Topeka. Pedregon 2nd, Hoffman 3rd, Etchells 4th, and Casey Spurlock in the 5th spot.
In top fuel, Scott Kalitta. This is qualifying. Scott in the far lane. Remember the past few races, we've seen a few tricycles under this young man. This was a frightening one here. Same scenario. Motor blows, pieces everywhere. Tire burns off this time, and Scott Kalitta, who has had a lot of experience, keeps it off the wall. They repaired the car, but I'm not sure it was ever the same. Here is Scott up against Kenny Bernstein in round 1.
The thing to remember is Bernstein changed cars at a U.S. Nationals time. Has a brand new Al Swindle car and has regained the consistency that carried him to the King of Speed title. Here he went 306 miles an hour at 473 to eliminate Scott Kalitta.
But the C word, consistency, is what Bernstein really needed. The performance was definitely back. In round number 2, up against the Vipe, the crowd with the retiring Don Prudhomme. And they rode with a winner. Prudhomme 477 to defeat Bernstein's 486, 298 miles an hour. And in the final round, Corey Mack wanted a piece of the snake.
Steve, this was one of the great drag races of all time. The McDonald's team, owned by Larry Minor, will have a new owner in 1995. So Corey Mack was motivated, but he always is when he runs the snake. Oh, so close at the finish line. Identical 479s. McLenathan wins it at 302.
What a classic. You both ran 479. You saw each other all the way down.
Really? Oh, I thought he left on me. I saw him out there. I'm all, come on, Beard of Speed. Let's just go by him. And it happened. It was perfect.
Scott Kalitta held on to a substantial lead after Topeka, followed by Prudhomme, Amata, his dad Connie, and Corey McLenathan in 5th.
When we got to the Chief Nationals in Dallas, Texas 2 weeks later, Scott Kalitta had to win 2 rounds to clinch the Winston Championship. Didn't matter what happened to Don Prudhomme. Well, both of those drivers struggled in front of a massive crowd in qualifying. In fact, going into the very last qualifying attempt, Don Prudhomme was not in the field. He was in the far lane. If he failed to make it on this shot, Scott Kalitta would be the Winston champ. Snake makes it safely, the number 10 spot at 482. But not so fortunate, Dave McClellan in top fuel qualifying was Michigan's Jack Ostrander in the near lane.
Steve, Jackie O's problems set in big time at the finish line. Both rear tires letting go. He slammed into the left-hand guardrail, then crossed over to the opposite side of the racetrack and just brushed the right-hand guardrail. The car sliding to a stop.
Jack Ostrander down here asking what happened. We really don't know what happened. Maybe the wing.
Well, it looks like the wing came down.
Unfortunately, you're no stranger to this kind of incident at this racetrack. In fact, this was mild compared to some.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I'm here, so.
The finals of Top Fuel. Don Prudhomme, the veteran, against the kid, Corey McLenithan, and another kid, Scott Kalitta, clinched his Winston crown. He advanced through 2 rounds of racing, and he in fact was defeated in the semifinals by Corey Mack. But those 2 first and second round victories were enough to propel Scott Kalitta to his first national title. Don Prudhomme got a measure of revenge, a 477 victory.
Yeah, that was bitching. I loved it. I wish my wife was here.
And what a victory ride. Snake got perched on top of the winning motor, high-fiving, signing autographs, loving his last visit to the Texas Motorplex. And Dave, as you well know, this was a tricky racetrack. It's all concrete. If you get out of the groove, especially with a short wheelbase funny car, almost anything can happen. And something weird happened in round number 2 as John Force squared off with Al Hoffman.
Force built up an early lead. Hoffman was laid out of the starting line. Then Force had problems, and Hoffman crossed the center line, disqualified.
Plenty exciting. I mean, like, that's kind of what it's all about. She left. She had dead holes. She wasn't moving. Put her wood. I almost thought about got to step off, but I didn't see old Hoffman. And next thing I know, she just shut off, and he went by me just throwing orange everywhere. It was bitching.
Then he crossed the center line.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that'll teach you.
And you win.
It's all destiny, and we'll take it. Right, Castro?
Well, if you win by the sword, John Force found out the hard way, you can die by the sword. He was against Cruz Pedregon in the semifinals.
And almost exactly the same thing happened, Dave. There is so much traction here that it tends to carry the front end even down the racetrack. You have no steering, and kablump, you run over the timing equipment, and NHRA throws you out. Pedregon to the finals.
John, when you make a withdrawal from the center line bank as you did in the previous round, now you have to make a deposit, I guess.
Pretty exciting, though. Stuff was flying.
Once again, Cruz Pedregon in the finals, this time his opponent for the second time in his career and the second time in the 1994 season was Gary Bolger at the wheel of the Dale Creasy Pontiac.
2 runners up, if that's what happens. That's a winning season for Bolger. Pedregon all over the racetrack. Bolger fought the good fight. Pedregon wins Dallas.
Cruz Pedregon, crew chief Bob Brandt, great job. 2 in a row.
Yeah, that's 2 in a row, and, you know, final round the last 4 times. It's great. We're getting a break here. Force is running awful good, but we're creeping up on him. Bob Brandt says, hey, got to learn how to run those before you can run in the 4s, and we're doing it. We're excited.
It was in pro stock that the fans were treated to some excitement as well. Darrell Alderman and Scott Jeffreyon again side by side at the starting line. Jeffreyon was in a must-win situation. He had to win this round to keep his championship hopes alive. Darrell Alderman dropped the clutch and the car never moved. Scott Jeffreyon advanced to the finals. He ran 7:09 at 194 on the single.
And it was yet another distributor problem, a sheared drive pin that put Darrell Alderman, the Dodge, on the sidelines. And how ironic in the final that Warren Johnson, if he beats Scott Jeffreyon, could give the Pro Stock title to Darrell Alderman. He doesn't want either one of them to have it, but that was the scenario. Great lead by Jeffreyon. Dodge in the near lane. A great victory by Jeffreyon. A 7:08 defeated a quicker 7:06.
It was just my day today. I was just lucky, and my crew was great as always, and this is for my Uncle Paul.
Congratulations, Uncle Paul.
Scott's uncle ill with cancer as Jeffreyon trying to claw his way back into the lead in the Pro Stock points chase. Only 1 race remained, and that was the Winston Select Finals at the Fairplex in Pomona.
And it was very simple, the mathematics on the Pro Stock Winston Championship. Darrell Alderman, regardless of what Jeffreyon did, had to win 2 rounds. Even if Alderman went out round 1 or round 2, Scott Jeffreyon had to win the Winston Select Finals to win the title. Here it was, all on the line, round 2, Alderman versus Kurt Johnson.
Darrell Alderman and his Dodge. Kurt Johnson and the Oldsmobile Cutlass, as they had battled all season long, came down to the final race of the year. and Kurt Johnson had problems, was forced to shut off. Darrell Alderman won the round and won the Winston Championship with that 7:08 elapsed time.
Maybe now you can get a good night's sleep and quit worrying about this thing.
Yeah, I know it's been a tough weekend. Of course, I don't know if it's mathematically over with yet or not, but
they're saying it is.
Well, I'll take it.
I'd say he'd take it. And once again, Alderman and Jeffrey met in the finals under the lights. Daylight saving time went out at Pomona, and it got dark real quick, Steve.
Interesting, though, even if Alderman should win this race, Scott Jeffrey would still have won more races during the year. Remember those early round losses? Seattle and Brainerd, they killed Jeffrey on. And at Pomona, Alderman put the dagger to his heart. 7:09. Without going into the details, all the turmoil in your life, this has to be as special as the first two.
I tell you, that McDonald's award, those people that voted for me, they'll never realize how much that means to me. And then winning the championship and winning the race here, it's just a dream come true.
So Darrell Alderman, the Winston champ for the third time in his career. Scott Jeffrey finished second, Warren Johnson third, then Jim Yates and Kurt Johnson, the top 5 in the Winston Championship chase.
John Forrest came home to Southern California with his 4th Winston Points Championship already in his pocket, but he wanted to impress the local folks. The kids he went to high school with, the junior high school with, all of those grandstands. Forrest qualifying, whoa, 497. 302 miles an hour. How about round number 1? John Forrest up against Paula Martin. Watch the Forrest car closely. Something's gonna happen. Kaboom! An explosion so loud it rocked Forrest to his knees.
Baby, what's wrong with you?
Whatever it was, they figured it out as Austin Coyle and Bernie Fennelly and the crew got the Castrol Chevrolet back into performance. He advanced into the semifinals where his opponent would be the surprising Richard Hartman. Hartman had been running well all day long, but not good enough to top a 5:07 at 303.74 miles an hour. Incredible speeds. Then it was the finals.
And Forrest was saving the best for last. Up against Cruz Pedregon. Cruz in his 5th consecutive finals. What a great ending to the Larry Minor ownership of the McDonald's team. The crowds in Southern California, they love night racing. They were weaned on it. Pedregon has problems. Forrest thunders to victory, and the world's fastest speed, 303.95 miles per hour for John Forrest. What a way to end 1994. 303.
And he ended up on top. His 4th Winston Championship. Cruz Pedregon finished second with that late season charge, followed by Hoffman, Etchels, and Spurlock.
Top Fuel has never seen a barrage of elapsed times as Shelly Anderson unleashed in Saturday's Budweiser Top Fuel Classic. This was the final round. She had already run 471, 474 for a new national record, and in the final against Corey McClenathan, Shelly wins $50,000, 471, a record.
We're real happy. This is wonderful. Budweiser, maybe we'll attract a sponsor. Right now, we're not racing next year, so this is real nice.
Is there a little home court advantage here?
Never. Not when you're racing against these guys, Kenny Bernstein, Eddie Hill, Kalitta. No, there's no advantage.
If you had been following Winston Championship drag racing during the latter half of the season, you knew the Budweiser King was back. When Kenny and Dale Armstrong got that new chassis from Al Swindle, things definitely took a turn for the better. His opponent at Pomona in the semifinals was Connie Kalitta. Watch this one close. The red and white Budweiser King staggered everyone when he ripped off the fastest speed ever, 311 miles an hour with a great 477 to go to the championship round.
In the final, Corey McClenathan, the other Larry Minor car, wanting to salvage at least one victory here for the team owner, up against Dale Armstrong, a concerned look on his face. Kenny Bernstein strapped tightly into that cockpit. Dale told us before, it's either gonna blow, go, or smoke the tires. Kenny Bernstein ends 1994 at 314 miles an hour. Good God. Kenny Bernstein, you love history, right? How about 314 miles an hour?
Oh man, I can't say enough for Dale Armstrong and the crew, Brooks, the whole guys with the Budweiser King team. I just get to ride in this beautiful machine today, believe me.
Now, as a businessman, you're not going to like this part. You just missed 50 grand, but you still ran a 472.
Oh, we almost got the 50, didn't we? Sorry, Shelly, but she can sleep good tonight. She got the 50 grand.
Final top fuel points, got Kalitta over Don Prudhomme, Corey Mack, Connie Kalitta, Joe Amato, the top 5. Let's salute all of our professional champions for 1994. David Schultz, nobody beat him. He beat himself with 2 red lights. What a season. Darrell Alderman, pro stock automobile, a 2-year layoff. He was nervous early on, but composed himself to win it for a 3rd time. John Force, for the first time in history, no video of a serious John Force fire. Now that's progress. Scott Kalitta, he tricycled 3 cars, ruined a couple of motors, a couple of chassis, and didn't give a damn. Drag Racing 1994 is a presentation of Diamond P Sports. Want the best seat in the house for motorsports entertainment? Then Diamond P Sports is your ticket for excitement. From over 40 spectacular titles in the growing Diamond P inventory, you can build a home video library of your favorite motorsports action that you'll enjoy for years to come. For the drag racing enthusiast, Diamond P annually presents the entire NHRA Championship season in review. You get all the dramatic action as the best drivers chase the elusive NHRA Championship crowns. Beginning with Drag Racing 86, you can pick and choose from the entire library of season-long highlights. For an exciting and comprehensive look at recent drag racing history, there's Decade of Thrills and Decade of Thrills 2, examining the most chilling, agonizing, and emotion-filled moments of the 70s and 80s. Now, funny car fans can't get enough of Fabulous Floppers 1 and 2. The sound and excitement of Pro Stocks takes the stage in Hot Rods from Detroit, and Top Fuel is What's Hot in Kings of the Sport. Interested in the legends of drag racing? Diamond P fills the bill with a dynamic story of Don Prudhomme and 2 videos on the one and only Big Daddy, Garlett's The Legend and Garlett's 2, The Legend Lives On. Now, if you're a drag racing history buff, you can trace the evolution of NHRA in Gathering Speed. For those who like their racing loud and raw, don't miss Top Fuel Sensations, the sights and sounds and smell of record-breaking performance, and Challenge of Fire, the thunder and fury of side-by-side jet car racing. If it's monster trucks, mud racing, and tractor pulling that cranks you up, then Shake, Battle, and Roll and Shake, Battle, and Roll 2 are for you. For racing of the H2O variety, there's Thunderboats, a fascinating look at 200-mile-an-hour hydroplanes and the fearless men who pilot them. Sprint car fans love the unpredictable winged whirl of outlaws from the Knoxville Nationals. Beginning with Knoxville 87, you can get the entire collection of annual mayhem. And fasten your seatbelt for a treacherous journey as up, over, and off-road takes you from the Baja Desert to outrageous stadium racing. For 2-wheel fans, the amazing aerial dogfighting called Supercross fuels the intensity for the flight to the finish. If you're a truck enthusiast, hey, you can't beat the 3-volume set entitled Truckin' Trilogy. It's all the best trucks, competition, and locales from the Truckin' USA TV series. Wanna go drag racing? Well, 2-time funny car champion and drag racing instructor Frank Hawley takes you from street to strip in this informative video that explains procedures and concepts it sometimes takes years for even veteran racers to get a handle on. Diamond P Sports brings you the story of Bernie Little, the owner of Miss Budweiser, the most recognized name in racing. Mr. Unlimited recalls a career that spans 3 decades in unlimited hydroplane racing. Share the ups, downs, elation, and sorrows. Once a used car salesman, now a multi-millionaire and the owner of the most famous racing boat ever to turn a prop. If you're ready for more mud and monster trucks, you'll want the 3rd installment of Shake, Battle, and Roll. It's more of the mud racing mishaps and monster truck tribulations that Diamond P Sports fans demand. Shake, Battle, and Roll 3 is sure to satisfy the mud-thirsty monster lover in you. Out of the Everglades and the Diamond P archives, perhaps the most unusual motorsport ever, swamp buggy racing. Swamp Fever spans a decade of the most outrageous amphibious vehicles ever to cross the sippy hole. Swamp Fever, watch out, it's catching. And finally, to complete your library, you must include the best-selling series of And They Walked Away, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Here are the most breathtaking moments from the Diamond P archives, racing's most spectacular spins, flips, wrecks, and fires, and in each perilous incident, the driver beats the odds. To order any of these terrific videos or to receive a full-color catalog detailing all of the titles available, just call 1-800-421-0725 or write to the address on your screen. Diamond P Sports. We make motorsports come alive.